will know what you need and who to follow up with. So it's even helpful to put your email, but you don't have to. We can go back and dig for that. So just a couple quick things to feel free to introduce. If you have a question, you can put that in the chat. You can also unmute yourself. I'm going to keep everyone muted, but you're welcome to unmute yourself if you need anything at all. And we'll get started in about 4 minutes. Hi again, this is just Christy. Just letting you know, for those who've just joined us, we're going to get started in a few minutes. So you are welcome to drop in the chat any questions that you have, and certainly to introduce yourself. We love it if people share any strengths they have around teaching, around technology, around just life itself, because who knows what we might need and who we can connect with. So feel free to let us know where in this globe you're joining us from, what you do, and any questions that you have, and that will all get recorded, and we will get answers to everyone, if not during the call, shortly after. It is being recorded. You can stay incognito. You don't have to show your video, but you are welcome to here in a few minutes when I take my sharing my screen off. I love to see your beautiful faces, so it's lovely if you feel up to it to turn your videos on. So just a couple more minutes. If you need anything, put it in the chat. My team is Tony Ann and Ashley. So if you have a tech support question, or you want to make sure that a question you have gets seen and heard, you can ping Ashley or Tony, and they will make sure that I am alerted. And if you see any pop-ups on my window about people trying to get into the space, just know that my team's got them covered, so everybody's good. And that's my husband, so I gotta turn off all my alerts. All right, everyone. Good to see you. If I'm really big and you're new to Zoom, first tip that I always ask people to do is put me on gallery view, because I don't need to be that big of a screen on your screen. So unless you like seeing me in full surround, that's cool. But welcome everyone. And I'm Christy, if we haven't met before. And just again, as a quick reminder, you can turn your video on or you can leave it off, whatever you're comfortable with. And my team that is joining us today is Ashley and Tony. They can help you with anything in the chat. And then we have the most amazing guest expert ever. I just pinged her this morning and said, hey, Jen, could you be my expert today? So hi, Jen. Maybe you could just say hey to everybody and introduce yourself, and because I'll just go on and on about you. So you might want to tell them the reality before I tell them my reality.
Hi, I'm Jen Newton, and I'm excited to be here. I am I'm special ed faculty at Ohio University, and you can find me online, Instagram and Facebook at Teaching is Intellectual, and we also have a website. So I guess that's all I'll say for now. We'll talk more.
Thank you. And just so you guys know, this is how it works. Anything that we say, we have a website, or you can follow me on Twitter. Ashley will put the web address or the social media link in the chat. Then, not only that, after the webinar, this session, which is also recorded, we will send you hyperlinks to everything. So don't feel like you have to capture what we say really quick, like, you know, follow me here or go there. Ashley has already put in Jen's website, and it'll be in all of the stuff that we follow up with you about. Okay, and so it's so good to see so many fabulous and beautiful faces. Hello, Miss Dana. Tammy, you're back for more. What's up? It's better today. I'm just letting you know. It's better than the first one. Yeah, so feel free. Shout out to Kansas there. Hello, Miss Tammy. If you want to stay with your camera off, guys, don't worry. And if I ever look like I'm not looking at my camera, this is the other quick thing. Usually we know that when you're going to teach online or teach, you know, face to face, you're prepared and you don't have dogs and children climbing all over you. But these are times where that just happens. And so I have this new puppy that's sitting on my lap. Here, I'll show you what it really looks like down here. Hello. And even with the bribing of treats today, Tammy, it's not working. He's having none of it. So it's going to be what it's going to be. And if you all have, I always say, rabbits, cats, dogs, children, invite them in. Then I'm not alone. But we have lots and lots to share with you today. And again, if you'll introduce yourself very quickly, you can do, there's one. There's a future revolutionary. Woohoo! It's like, no, I'm having none of that. All right, beautiful, beautiful. Yes. Introduce yourselves in the chat. If you have a question, put that in the chat as well. Again, this is being recorded so that we can go back and get all of your questions and get answers to them. I see that some of you are direct service providers. I have teachers and therapists. I also have faculty. I have professional development providers, coaches, itinerant teachers, parents, all that, which is beautiful. And so we're going to talk a lot about how to teach adults today. So even if those of you who are a pre-K teacher or a therapist, much of our work, even before this last week's unveiling of whatever, when we're working with little kids, we're often working through their parents, their caregivers, their grandparents. And so you might think you're a preschool teacher, but oftentimes it's our teaming and our collaboration that really is the magic. So as we talk about adult learners today, and as we talk about teaching online, we're really talking about teaching adults online. But that could be, how are you sharing information with families? How are you supporting families? And they may not be who you're normally teaching or servicing. So just wanted to say that for those of you who are in different roles than some of us who work strictly with adults. Okay, so let me just check the chat. So I'm gonna just, Tammy, there's a couple Tammys on, but Tammy from Alaska, I wanted to share with you that there's been several questions from people about working in rural areas, especially but I'm going to generalize that to say any area, because even urban areas like in downtown Cleveland have trouble with internet access. And we're going to talk today about equity and some issues that we have to be very cognizant of in terms of access when we go online. And what does that mean for all of our families and all of our students? And so I'll ask certainly our guest expert, Jen, and others to pipe in at any time, but that will be one thing that we're going to cover in more detail in the coming days, is about how do we be very thoughtful about who we're serving. And we'll talk about that just from a human perspective, but also from an equity. So I wanted to mention that for any of you who are in a rural area and or where other accessibility issues might be your concern. Okay, so let's get to it. You all are muted, but you don't need to stay muted. For those of you who know me, I don't pause, so you just have to interrupt. It's just this beautiful thing of being online that we can be much more fluid and talk over each other a little bit, because the timing is just a little bit off. And so if you want to get a word in edgewise, you sometimes have to kind of jump in. So one of the things I love to do, whether I'm face-to-face with people or virtual, is just take a minute to ground ourselves. And so Jen, our special expert today, is one of the most inspiring people I know. And so I was getting all of her links and ready for today. And at the end of her latest post, this is what she shared. And so it struck me, it makes me want to cry, actually, but that it's, you know, that she has their back, that she is there for them no matter what. And that comes through in everything she does, regardless of what format she's teaching or interacting with. So I'm just going to pause for a minute, let you read her words. And then if you're inspired by something, or it makes you think of something about your own strengths or your own priorities, just drop it in the chat for others to share as well. And I do pause for longer than it may feel like normal in when we're face to face. Though that's another good thing we could learn, is that sometimes pausing and just letting people process is a good thing. So I'm going to keep everyone muted, but if you purposely unmuted yourself because you wanted to share something, feel free to verbally or to drop something in the chat. All right, and I'm having a little bit of trouble muting some of you. I don't know whether that's just me or what's going on here. All right, there we go. There we go. So, okay, so today, what we're doing, other than just being inspired, couple just quick things. If you haven't done this before, or you haven't done this with me, again, you can keep your video on, you can turn your video off, it can come and go, whatever's comfortable. At any point, feel free to share who you are, where you are, connect with other people. That's an amazing thing that technology allows us to do, is meet people at the blink of an eye that we never would have crossed paths with before. So feel free to share your strengths, share your dreams, share your hopes, share your needs in the chat. Again, this is recorded. You will get a link to this session as well as the other two sessions. I did one yesterday and one the day before. You'll get my PowerPoint. So if anybody's on the phone only, which I don't think we have anybody on the phone only today, which is fine if you need to. You'll get my PowerPoints, you'll get links, you'll get everything. So don't worry. You'll also be put in what we call a flow, where information will be dripped to you over time. That means every day or every week, kind of depending on your stamina, I'm going to give you a practical tip from our experts, from my experience, from the field. I've been telling people lately that I'm trying to be their Google. Like, I don't want you to have to look everywhere for stuff. I want you to just know that I'll do some of that heavy searching and lifting and give you just sort of cut to the chase stuff. So Ashley just dropped the PowerPoint for today's session in the chat. So if you like to have something, you can take me at a full screen and have things on more than one window or more than one screen, literally. So that's, you'll get information. If you aren't getting emails from me, I might be in your spam or your promotions folder. So you really want to make sure that you've received at least one email from me, not from Zoom, but from me. And this is my email. And so if you can, after this webinar, maybe that's your first thing, is make sure we're connected. If we're not, if you're not getting my tips, if you're not getting an email with Q&A from me, if you're not getting the link by Saturday for sure, then reach out to me and my team and let me know, okay? All right. Also, if Diane, if you meant to chat with me privately, totally fine, but I might just be in your queue as private. So if you wanted everyone to know, you might need to repost to everyone. Okay, quick things for those of you who don't know me. Again, I'm Christy. My job for many, many years was as an early interventionist and an early child special ed teacher. And if you're like, these aren't very good pictures, well, it was a long, long time ago, certainly before smartphones, but this was my work in the great state of Idaho. I don't know if we have anyone from Idaho today, and in the great state of Oregon. And so this is my work and my passion for young children with diverse abilities. And then in 1997, I moved here to Ohio. I think my dearest friend ever, Sana, is on today. I was faculty at Kent State for 16 years, and I had this amazing adventure and worked many years with Sana, who is still leading the revolution there at Kent. I can't wait to see your face. And then Ashley is also a doctoral candidate at Kent. So what happened a few years ago, so quickly, I do live in Ohio. I grew up in Idaho. I hang out in Iowa a lot, so I usually say to people I'm from Idaho, Ohio, and then maybe much to Sana's disappointment, I left the university back in 2013, and ever since then I've been really focusing on what we call the early care and education revolution. And one of the things that I'm going to invite Jen to talk about today, or if people have questions, is her approach to really revolutionizing how we think about pre-service. And in particular, I see some people chatting about it, how we assess learning, how we think about grading, how we think about accountability, how we really revolutionize our approach to thinking about these humans that are here to learn. So keep up the chat. Again, it's not rude at all to be chatting with each other while I'm talking. I'm just doing a quick introduction for those of you who don't know me. Again, my job in this world is to help revolutionize early care and education, in particular, how we support and learn through transformative professional development. Okay? So today, what are we going to do? So let me give you a quick overview. If you would like, and if it helps you stay engaged, you can put in the chat the thing you're most interested in learning about. Now, if you joined and you had one burning question that you wanted to ask, and after I give you this overview, you're like, I don't know that we're going to cover that. Again, put your question in the chat. We will answer it in one way or another. And then if by Saturday you haven't started to receive answers from me, that means we're not connected. And so you want to make sure you for sure put an email out to me and my team. And so Ashley, maybe put my email and my social media in the chat really quick so people know how to stay connected as well. Okay? And so again, if you're asking questions and I'm kind of just still talking, those are all getting recorded, and Ashley will interrupt me and make sure. So the first topic we're going to do is what are your own skills? We want to make sure that you feel super confident and super competent in working with adults as well as working in these different web-based technologies. For many of us, we have been doing this for decades. And for any of you who were on the call Wednesday night, I really struggled. It was a challenge for me. And I have been literally doing this for 20 some years. So I say that not to freak you out going, oh my God, I thought I could just do an hour webinar and be ready tomorrow. I mean to say, this is really hard work. Just like any of you who've been teaching preschool or being an early interventionist or a coach, how long has it taken you to feel confident in what you do? And so we want to support you the best we can, but you need to know what your skills are and what support you need. So if you're really curious about some things about you, I really want to know about number one in your, in the chat. If you're really thinking about, no, I really want to make sure that I am clear about what I'm actually accomplishing. We're going to do a live walkthrough with Jen's descriptions of how she teaches, but we're going to back it up and we're going to hear her thinking behind it, where she's going to tell us what was her outcome, what was her significant learning outcome. So if you're really curious about how do I step back and be clear about what I'm teaching before the tools and the web-based technologies, then number two is what you're going to be most interested in. The third one is really thinking about, who are you teaching? Are they parents? Are they coaches? Are they students? Are they undergraduate students? Are they graduate students? Are they parents? Are they leaders? So anything that you can do to really be thoughtful about who they are, universal design, and this idea of equity. We could do a whole series on that alone. You might say you're mostly interested in number three in the chat. And then the fourth one is really thinking about long-term. Right now, I know many of us are in survival and thinking about the short term, next hour, next day, next week, and many of our families are as well. So we want to really be thinking about which students are ready to go the next step, which are still trying to figure out housing, which are still trying to figure out if they're safe, who's worried about their health or needing to care for their health right now. So I want you to really sort and think about your students and your staff as being in different places. And so some are ready to go and some are ready, like, what are you going to offer this summer that's going to be good PD? And others are like, I have no idea where I'm going to be this summer. So really thinking about tiered professional development. I'll be sharing some work that Sana and myself and a series of doctoral students did around how do we do MTSS, if you will, when we think about professional development. And I'm going to give you lots of strategies and a framework. So that's where we're headed today. Anybody want to unmute themselves and add a comment or something they haven't already added in the chat because you just would rather talk than type, before we get kind of into the first one? And we won't spend equal amounts of time on each one, but we'll start at the beginning with what you bring to the table. Ashley, anything I need to know about? If not, if it's all good, we'll take care of it later. That's cool too.
Break down some of these, but since you're asking, earlier somebody was interested about certificates. She was sharing that she was talking about these opportunities that you're providing to some of her colleagues, and I mentioned that I didn't think we had that ability now, but maybe we could explore it in the future. So that was one thing, and I think that's really it for the moment.
Okay, cool. Yeah. All right. Yep, I see. Yep. Okay. So so we've got a range of people who've never done this to people who have been doing it for decades. So let me see if I can't give you each something that is useful and helpful. Okay. So I'm just going to take a minute and talk to you a little bit about you. So when you think about your readiness to teach either hybrid, which would be some face-to-face, some on ground, we sometimes call it, sometimes when we're together, or virtual. Right now, everything had to move and shift because we are not allowed to / encouraged to be in human contact. So we're trying to be connected virtually. I want you to think about how much support might you need and what kind of support. So for example, today I have Tony and Ashley helping me on the back channel. If you are going to do a Zoom session or a Google Hangout or just a cafe chat with your families. Think about who's going to support you in the tech part. You want to be fully present with people and be able to deliver the content, engage in the content. And so is there a way that you can leverage someone, even if you've got a high schooler that knows tons about technology, that could be your back channel support? How can you think about creative ways so that you're not the only one? It's really hard to be emotionally present for your humans, deliver thoughtful content, stay on track, keep your thoughts in mind, and provide tech support. So just be thinking about that in a creative way and be prepared for it. How do you learn? So if you're going to learn a new web-based technology, think about how do you want to get information. So do you like to read about it? Do you like to see a tutorial? Do you like to talk to somebody about it? And then make sure that that web-based technology has tech support, has tutorials, has guidance that matches your learning style. So if everything is a blog, that's maybe not going to be a match. So check YouTube. Do they have some quick tutorials that you can watch others do it? And that leads me to the last thing. If you know somebody who's already using a particular web-based technology, that's always my then use that one, because you have this amazing human that you can call up or text and say, how do I? And they can support you. So you really want to think about those that are around you that can offer support, as well as what's already available online. So I'm going to pause for a minute, and any of you amazing humans who have been doing this for a while, anything else you would give as first, support for people. Either they've been doing it for a while, but maybe want to change and do some more sophisticated web-based technologies, or people are like brand new, I've never had to do this by myself. Any thoughts you would do about them as the facilitator? Even if it's your own story about how you got comfortable doing this, is there anything that comes to mind? All right. If something does, drop it in the chat for me, okay? So this one we have a little bit more on, and I'm going to navigate to some things on my screen. So anything that I'm about to show you, just know that this is what we're going to give to everybody. So, sorry, that's okay, Tammy. I was just asking if there was any advice that people had, for example, like what you see Ashley posting in the chat, and our other guest expert, Sarah Nichols, who's a little incognito today, just their own advice about how to hone your own skills so you feel confident in working with these web-based technologies and connecting with other humans in a virtual way. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen still, and I'm going to navigate to a couple of things. And so just know that all of what I'm going to share with you is what we're going to drop in the chat and what we're going to email you. We just wanted to kind of do it in dosage. So Ashley, let's start with the significant learning outcomes. So I pull from LD Fink's work around this, and what you want to think about is a little bit about like a Trivial Pursuit game. This is the best analogy I can give you. So when we think about what is it that I want to accomplish? So I was talking to some amazing PD providers in Michigan today, in Illinois yesterday, in Alaska the day before. Everyone's like, how do we support families? How do we support our students? How do we support early care and education providers? And so before we get into the trap of answering, how do I want you to really think about what is it that you want to accomplish? What is it that you want? So like today when Robin and I were talking, she identified 3 learning outcomes. I want them to feel confident with the technology skills, that they can be able to initiate a Zoom conference and help the people that are going to attend it also join the Zoom. I want them to be able to facilitate a session where they help reframe the problems that people are bringing, and they don't feel like they have to just solve everybody's problems. And I want them to be able to deliver interactive sessions through video conferencing. So she was really clear, okay? So these are 6 pieces of a puzzle, or 6 pieces of a Trivial Pursuit game. And whenever you design professional learning, this goes for face-to-face as well as online, we got to think about what is it that we want. And we want a mixture of foundational skills, caring skills, integration, learning how to learn, and so forth. So I'm going to show you what we're going to give you, and then I'm going to navigate to Jen's website, and we're going to walk through it real time. So the Trivial Pursuit game analogy is saying, I can't win at Trivial Pursuit unless my whole pie has different colored pieces. I can't have just yellow. I can't have just orange. I can't have just green. I have to have a green and an orange and a brown and a blue and a pink, and that makes it richer and more in depth. So we're going to look at 7 hows of what Jen did, and she's going to help us unpack, was she really trying to get at foundational knowledge? Was she getting at the human dimension? Was she looking for application? And so in the chat, Ashley has given you our starter sentences. And so what I did, oh, do you have that one yet? Yeah, I pushed the wrong one, Ashley. There we are. Okay. So in here, what I've done is I've taken each part of the Trivial Pursuit pie, foundation, those words should now be looking redundant, application, integration, and so forth. And then I took the example of authentic assessment. Whatever it is you're teaching, it could be any topic. I just took as an example authentic assessment, and we gave you sentence starters. And so let's say I was doing something on authentic assessment and I wanted a human dimension goal. Then I would write something like, participants will gain an understanding of the importance of asking open-ended questions when interviewing families, or participants will gain skills that they're better able to interact with and assess children who are English language learners. So by thinking about the human dimension, I write a really different learning outcome than if I'm thinking about application. Participants will understand the importance of knowing how to solve problems related to assessing English language learners. Do you see that? So it's still about English language learners. It's still about authentic assessment, but one's an application goal and one is a human dimension goal. So we're going to go over to, I'm going to come over to you now, Jen. We're going to go to Jen's website. I'm going to go back up here in the chat so I can get it fast or semi-fast, or not at all. There we go. Teaching is intellectual. And on her latest blog, she had a 7 things. And so maybe, Jen, what you could do just in your own way is tell us a little bit about why these 7, and then your backstory or your thinking about what you were hoping to accomplish.
Absolutely. Hey, everybody. I'm excited to be here with you. It's always fun to talk about teaching. It's my favorite thing to talk about, actually. When I got word that my university was going to quote unquote pivot online, it was originally set for 3 weeks. And that we were on spring break. It was the second day of spring break. And we get the word that this is going to happen. I also live in a very small rural Ohio college town. And so our area school district was also closing for that same amount of time. So and this was early on. It was a little over a week ago. So it was still we weren't seeing a lot of closures yet. And a lot of people were uncertain about that. So the first thing I wanted to do was connect with my students, even though I knew that they were on spring break. I knew they were on cruises and all kinds of different places, but I knew that when they got those emails or saw those tweets from our president, that they would panic. So my first thought was, I want to create an opportunity for us to connect. I sent them an email, and I was really flippant in the email. I was like, are you guys ready for an adventure? We're off to try something new. I know we can do it. Here's how it's going to look. Here's what I'm thinking. It's going to keep changing, but it's fine because we're going to talk about it. And that's how we're going to navigate this. And I got numerous responses back immediately saying, I feel better already. Thank you. I was starting to freak out. And, you know, they're in 2-day-a-week field experience. Their schools have closed. All their assignments are attached to the children in their classrooms. They don't have access to them.
Yeah.
So there's lots of things that immediately set them buzzing. So my first thought was, I got to calm everybody down. So I created a Slack channel. My university doesn't use Slack. We use Blackboard, and we have Teams, Microsoft Teams. Neither one of those were particularly nimble in the way that I wanted. So I set up a Slack channel. We called it Surviving Lockdown, and I invited everyone to join it. That has become our big place for our group chats, and everybody checks in with each other. So then when a week later, when the university said we're not opening for the remainder of the semester, that was where I found out, was in the Slack channel, because the students got the message before faculty did. So, and they went right there to share it with each other. So we'd already established that this was a place where we could be together. So that was one of the first things, and I've recommended Slack to everyone. It's free. You can add people in a big group, but you can also make smaller channels. So lots of good things about that. The other thing that I would say is that, remember, we're talking about two different things today. One is responding to the current moment that we're in. And then the second thing is sort of broadly thinking about how we teach and support and communicate with each other online. So I didn't develop an online class for this pivot. I am simply adjusting. So we're taking away our face-to-face time. I reduced a lot of the, like Christy was saying, the so what has to happen, what I want to happen, the dreams that I have about the intellectual engagement that we're all going to be in. I let that go. And I'm focusing on the things that have to happen. There's a key assessment in my class. So for those of you who are in higher ed, you know about these CAPE assessments that we have to collect data on. This is a non-negotiable thing, because I know it's big, because I know it's dependent on their access to students that they no longer have. I tried to make it as simple as possible, as upfront as possible. So I have a case study with a fake kid where we create some data for the folks who weren't steady enough with their learner before the break. So now we're there, some group, and they're in two groups in our channel. So one group is working on that case study, and the other is working on students that they already had data from. So again, just really thinking about how to be a problem solver and how to reduce as much stress and tension for the students, and how to communicate all the time. I check in with them every day in Slack, and they're, you know, that somebody will join because they're still technically now still on spring break because they extended it a second week. So we're not supposed to start any learning until next week, but they'll pop on every day and say, hey, I hope everybody's feeling well, or so-and-so has a fever, or, you know, so we're all communicating with each other in that way. The other really important part for me about this is that there's no disruption of feedback. So a number of you were asking about grading, and I have a number of posts about I'm an ungrader. I subscribe to an ungrading philosophy, and there's several posts on the website about that. And Susan Blum has a new book coming out this fall on ungrading, with all the people that I've learned from are in it. So I'm really excited about that.
I wanted to, before you go forward, this is super helpful. I wanted to make a parallel to teams that are in service, and the non-negotiable would be around maybe kids' IEPs. And so there's been a lot of questions about, are we responsible to still deliver specially designed instruction? Who's supposed to deliver that? And even today, the question was, who's collecting the data? We'll come back to what ungrading is too, Sarah, so just hold that for just a second. But we'll provide links and explain that. So if you guys would like a little bit more support about supporting families and or teams around IEPs, because that's what I heard about the non-negotiable parallel, check out my podcast 40. I'll put the link to it in the chat, but again, no, you'll get all of this. I can't do both. Podcast 40. So I'm going to go back to Jen, but I wanted y'all to know that there's parallels in our in-service life of the shark music that we hear, but we have to do this, or there's a rule about this, or there's compliance, money, some high stakes something tied to it. So it can't just be like, let it go. We just won't work on IEPs, or we just won't grade. Well, there is some actual possibilities. So back to you.
And ungrading doesn't mean not grading. It just means that we focus much more on feedback and revise and resubmit and setting an expectation or criterion for mastery. So we would keep doing the things that we're already doing. I just don't assign sort of a point value to the work, because I want all teachers to have mastery on the skills. And so sometimes that means we do more revise, resubmit together. So there's a couple of things that I set up to do that. The way that I have it set up now is that, again, we're using Slack because it's really nimble. It's an app. It doesn't rely on internet access. They can use their phones, and lots of my students are in rural Ohio where they have spotty internet. So that's one of the reasons Slack is working well for us. So I set them up in channels to be able to give peer feedback. This is an adaptations class. So they're working on essentially developing PLAST and goals and objectives. They don't know how to write goals and objectives, and they're not special educators, so they've never had that experience before. So I gave them sort of sentence starters, a template, and then they're giving each other feedback. And when they feel like, I think we've got it, they send it on to me so that I can give feedback as well. And then we move on to the next component. So it's really just about that iterative learning and the teaming and collaboration. And you're probably already doing that. Same thing with IEPs, right? It's a team effort. We're all working on that together and making them right and appropriate. There are so many challenges right now in understanding what it is we need to be doing and what specialized services look like when schools are closed. I would really encourage you to call your reps today, as there are some provisions in the COVID Family Care Act that are really problematic for IDEA and pretty scary. So I would definitely encourage you to call your reps today and ask them to not allow Betsy DeVos to have the rights to give a waiver for IDEA. We want to make sure there's not a lack of protection for kids and families, but we do need flexibility. And we have to figure out how to be flexible. So like I said, what we're going to focus on for the next 6 weeks is getting our case studies finished and getting them finished to the extent that they're as good as they can possibly be. And we're doing that really nimbly. I'm not using Blackboard at all. I'm not doing there's no synchronous connections, but we are talking a lot. And to be honest, they're feeling very stressed about all of the limitations that this switch has made. So again, it's not an online class. In this context, I do teach online. This is not an online class. This is a shift. So I think having that mindset is really important. Now, the flip side is I have a graduate course, a practicum course that's already all online, and they have done what the state requires. The state is cutting the requirements in half, and they've cut them in half, and we've already met that. So I've ended that class because they did what had to be done. So again, it's like, what do we have to accomplish? I let go of everything I want to accomplish. I am creating a resource repository for my students. We do have plans for how we're going to continue to grow together. We are actually going to watch a couple documentaries, hopefully together, because Netflix has this thing where you can watch together. It's really awesome. So we're hoping that we can keep learning, but right now we're doing what we have to do.
Perfect. Okay. So I think that's in so many parts of that, Jen, is helpful for people to see as you read through what she did or the decisions she made. I hope you can hear that each time she was like, what is what is I want to accomplish, and what's a priority right now, and who am I serving? And so we're going to come back to that as well. And Jen, maybe if you want to look at anything in the questions as we move forward. One of the other things that we'll do for you guys as we're working here, we have another resource that this is what I alluded to earlier, that Sana, Dr. Sana from Kent State, and Ashley and a bunch of other doctoral students at the time worked on. It's how to match your web-based technology with your outcome. Now, we're not making recommendations of specific tools. You can ask those questions and we will try to give you our recommendations or our preferences. What I want to give you is a framework. And so I wrote a blog the other day that a provider asked me, why do you do Zoom instead of a closed Facebook group? And one of you just asked, what's the best way to share videos? And Jen was sharing, that on her very first thing that she was saying, oh, let's get a Slack channel. And if any of you are old like me, you're like, what the heck is a Slack channel? And then you feel old and incapable and like your lid goes flipped and you're like, I can't possibly teach online. I don't know what Slack is. I didn't know Netflix had that. Okay, take a breath. You don't have to know everything right now. You just have to know what your skills are, what you want to accomplish, and we'll build on this, okay? So Ashley's going to put in the chat a blog where I walked you through this framework for how to decide which technology is the right match. I want you to stay there versus I got to learn Slack and I got to go Google Netflix and I got to Google Screencast. I learned 3 new words in 30 seconds. Okay. So what we have also, you'll get this all in an email. We take the outcome, which is up here at the top. So participants interact, people observe. Notice Jen said we have a case study where I want them to watch a child. So are people going to be doing observations? Am I trying to, Jen also mentioned giving timely feedback. So let's say it is about feedback. What she could do is then she goes down that column of giving feedback, and wherever the X marks the spot, we're telling you which type of web-based technology would support that outcome. We've given you some examples just so that you know what you're Googling or searching for, but we're not saying these are free necessarily. We're not saying these are going to be around forever necessarily. We're not saying your district will allow you to use it or your university. We're not saying that they're HIPAA or FERPA compliant, because those are all things you each have to consider. But once you know, what are my skills? What am I trying to accomplish? Who am I serving? Then you can bring this beautiful dots together and pick, and then you could Google what's the best way to share videos that isn't based on the internet or a strong bandwidth. There'll be 100 answers to it, and you don't have to know everything today. What we want you to do is have good sound decision making.
I would also say less is more. And I think someone said that earlier as well, like, particularly with this context and this sort of movement, just go super simple. And if your folks are already on Facebook, you already have a Facebook group, please use that. There isn't any, there's FERPA issues with that, but there isn't any need for us to sort of go out there and find every new thing. I would really encourage, like, videos really shouldn't be more than 3 to 5 minutes long, really giving people exactly what they need to know, and then additional resources as needed. You can send links to and add documents, but really keeping it simple. I think one of the things that's hard right now is that you're seeing a lot of people who are promoting a lot of, like, having lighting in these kinds of spaces and do like, no. That's not, this is a trenches moment, right? We're responding, we're not prepping. So I really keep it simple. I'm happy to talk. I do know some things about some text and I'm happy to talk about those things, but I want to really, like, reduce that. One more thing I would say too, because we talk about equity, is the other thing when you are using video is make sure you're captioning and bringing and transcribing so that they're accessible for a variety of people. It's important for people who are deaf and hearing impaired, but it's also important for those of us who are working with partners who are also working at home and kids who are in the house, and we just don't always have access to the audio. So accessibility is really important. Image putting your image descriptions into all of that so that people who are using screen readers can still have access to everything is really, really important. And I do know about some apps and things like that. I'm happy for people to contact me if I can be helpful. But those things are all available, and we need to make sure they're built in to our design on the front end so that we're not having to go back and put them in the end.
Yeah. And I don't, as long as I've been doing this, I still am not where I want to be. And so we just keep gaining awareness and trying to move in that direction. As Jen said, it's just like anything. You don't want to retrofit it. You want to build it in. So let's talk a little bit about who we're serving, and then let's come back to what some of your questions are and what do we do going forward. So just a couple more tips. Let me just put this. I got so much open here. This is sort of just closure on, oh, wrong button, Christy. This is just closure on what we were just talking about in terms of like what your priorities are and being in the trenches and for right now. So for right now, doing something, it may not be the best ever, but don't beat yourself up about it and then get paralyzed. But also take a step back and say, maybe my job right now, to my families, to my teachers, to my staff, to my students, is what we talk about with children. And so whenever I get a little bit panicky, I go, what do I know about children that I can leverage and apply to this scary situation? Because I know a lot about kids. Okay, how can I use that? Well, I know that children need to be safe, seen, soothed, and secure. So if I'm running around creating all this web-based stuff, but it doesn't attend to their basic needs for safety, being seen, soothed, and secure. And I hope you heard that in everything Jen said. She said, but even when we got this far, we circled back and said, are you safe? Do you need something? What can I do to make you feel okay about that you're going to graduate and still become a teacher? And do we have a secure relationship that we have that trust? Okay. And if you said, well, I don't know, I've never really worked with these families before, then that's where we start. We start with building a rapport and a trust so that they know that your email is the one they could open, and there'll be what's value there, not all the stuff they're seeing on social media, because everybody has an opinion. So how do I know that I can be a trusted resource for my families, for my teachers, for my staff? Okay, so that was just a quick, and anybody jump in. Okay, so who are you serving? So a couple of comments about this, and I want to look at my notes because I have a lot of comments, and Jen's already alluded to some, but I think they all are worth repeating. So the first thing I like to think about is just being thoughtful. And that's what she's saying is like, what's doable? If I'm at home and I've got dogs, cats, rabbits, coworkers, somebody has decided, I think it was Dr. Isela Garcia said, let's just call these children and partners our coworkers. So when we get online, we can say, you know what my coworkers did today? And you can talk about all the things they did that drive you crazy. But we have to be thoughtful that not everybody, even disability or ability aside, wants to hear it, read it, or watch it. So that's where the universal design comes in, that when you're representing a concept, that you have things in visual, auditory, written, but you could also get into the experiential, into the feeling part of it. But it always goes back to what's your what and knowing who your learner is. Then when you think about thoughtfulness, think about timing. Are you overwhelming them? That's me. I do it all the time. I'm aware of it, but I can't stop it. So I'm on a plan to stop it. But if one is good, in my opinion, 1,000 is fabulous. So I have to work really hard at, or does everybody want to get an email from Christy on Sunday? Or maybe not. So think about when you send it out, how you send it out, what format it's in. I want you also to think about privacy. If you're going to be having very, courageous, difficult, you're giving feedback, these conversations are about people, then you have to think about not only the families that you may be discussing, the IEPs that you may be working on, but the feedback you're giving somebody. So if Jen's my student and I'm telling her that she has room to grow, how do I do that in a way that respects her privacy and that somebody doesn't have access, a future employer, um, anybody that can come back and look at the feedback I gave Jen when she was an undergrad at my university. These are big things about using social media for giving feedback, who has real access and ownership over what you create and what you share. There's not an easy answer to all of this, but it's just a thing to consider, okay? I also want you to think about logins and passwords. If you're like me, the thing that will make you lose your cool and need a drink faster than anything is somebody says, it's somewhere in your email. And I hate it. Ashley knows it. I hate searching my email. I swear to God, even if I know who sent it, the keyword and the date, I still can't find it. And nothing will make me nastier than having to go search my email or look for a password. I have a trillion systems of how to memorize and retrieve my passwords. None of them work. So the less you need one more password, the better. But then that gets to how safe and secure is it? So there's a trade-off always. But like Jen said, they're using one place. It's their homeroom. And they're not then also doing this and that. And whoo, that's shiny. That's cool. So really think thoughtfully about, will your person you're there to serve, are you thinking about their access, their logins, their passwords? Are they on a mobile device? Are they young? Are they old? Do they need bifocals? Are they going to have to take glasses on and off every single time you shift and move in your delivery of content? These are just little things that we just want to be thoughtful, and maybe, hopefully, going forward, we consider this level of thoughtfulness even for when we're face to face with these humans. That brings us to universal design. I already hit on that. Multiple means of representation. That's what Jen's talking about, closed captioning or printed transcripts, things in print as well as being able to hear it or see it, always mixing or pairing to the best we can. But that also goes to, how does the person share back with me what they know and can do? So like today, you can talk to me or you can chat with me. That's at least two ways for you to stay engaged. Third way is you can watch others. So you always want to think of multiple means of representation, but also multiple means of engagement and expression. How do I know you gained anything out of today? So we have to think broadly about these things, and you won't get them all always, but you think of that Trivial Pursuit pie. Perhaps one part got at their expression and one part got at the representation. And then the equity part has to be really, really big. This is a big challenge for me, and I'm just a personal I statement, but I am a person of not only privilege, but of white privilege. And so I have to understand that every decision I make is coming through my mindset, through the white dominant culture. And whether I'm aware or unaware of my biases, I'm making decisions, choosing platforms, making assignments through that mindset. And I have to understand that the white dominant culture is having negative impact / harming others in our communities. So I have to do more and more inner work, not only around my privilege, but around my white privilege. So I have to just, every time I can say that, as clunky as I say it, is to say that's my own personal journey to understand if I'm going to do grading or ungrading, that decision that I make absolutely for me comes from a white privilege perspective. I can't help that it will be the autopilot, but I can help what the decision I ultimately make by using notions of the intersectionality of race and gender, spirituality, language, religion, sexuality, ability. So any of us that are very hot on inclusion, this equity issue is big for us as well. So it's not just about bandwidth. It's not just about being able to log in and access it in a materialistic or physical way. It's making sure that what we are doing is not doing harm to our learners by being something that is challenging them because of our privilege, or for me, my white privilege. So that's a big thing that we could talk days about. And I'm happy if any of you have been on this journey as well, would like to comment, way back from just being thoughtful about these humans to universal design to equity. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that we can see one another. Again, if I'm really big, go to what do you call it? Gallery view instead of speaker view, and just share out. We have 5 more minutes to kind of begin to get closure. I'll use the last few minutes to tell you what happens next, but you're welcome to jump in now and share a story. Make sure your question gets posted in the chat because that's recorded. Yeah. Thoughts about those we're serving? Yeah.
I'll say something about, I guess, equity and thinking about assignments and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I'm teaching ESL students at a community college. Many of my students are Asian. One of the issues that's been raised recently, of course, is the whole idea of describing the coronavirus as the Chinese flu or some other description that's really inappropriate. I want to talk about racism in my classes with them, but I don't want to make them feel uncomfortable. I'm thinking about how to address this in a college level assignment, how to do it in a non-threatening way, but to let them talk about it. One of my students brought up in Zoom yesterday that she'd watched the Trump press conference. And now that I'm thinking about that, I know what she was referring to, even though when I talked to her in Zoom, I was trying to avoid any kind of political discussion, but I feel like that's got to be brought up somehow.
Okay. Thank you, Sarah. That's really important. And so I'm going to model something for you all. When someone asks, how do I question? It's actually a trap for any of us who are fixers, doers, keepers, think we have an answer. In this time of really complex questions, because Sarah's asking a question that I bet each of us has grappled with at one point in time, and it's just now really in our faces. We need to hold space for each other and just allow her to have the space to share that concern. And then we come back with questions that are generative, and I'll put resources for this process in your drip content. But what question could I ask Sarah that would help her go deeper into her own inquiry versus, oh, you know what you need to do, Sarah? You need to ask this question, read this book, and do this activity. Now, she really wants that. She really would like the answer. But I don't know Sarah, and I do, but I don't know Sarah's students. I don't know her context. I don't know her comfort level. So before I get into advice giving, I need to come back with a question. So if I said to her something like, Sarah, where is it that you personally want to grow in your own comfort or knowledge about racism and its impact on your students? I might say to her, Sarah, if you were to feel just a little bit more confident the next time you were with your students, what's one action you would feel comfortable taking that would allow you to feel like you addressed it, but didn't dive into the politics or racism and you were unprepared? These are
Do you want me to try to answer that right?
Sure.
So one of the things that I've done in the past is I've had my students read about the Chinese Exclusion Act, because that's a historical element to our nation's history. And we can talk about how history tends to repeat itself and the recycling of these issues of nativism and things like that that come up in terms of American culture, because my students are ESL students.
So what's beautiful about what Sarah just did is she even remembered a time when she had had success doing this before. And it triggers her brain into going, I actually kind of can maybe do this. I might need some other resources or ideas that people have done, but I have done it myself before. So how could I take what I've done before that worked and revisit it or tweak it? Or, you see where we're going? Yeah. Beautiful.
Yes, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. That was perfect. So those are called generative questions. and it comes from appreciative inquiry. And I have tons of stuff. My friend Jennifer Lopez, yes, we call her J-Lo, is an expert in this area. And we've been working with teams, early childhood special ed teams, early intervention teams around it. I'll give you lots of resources so you can think about it as well.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sarah. Jen, did you want to add something? Okay. So time goes so fast. So quick thing, guys. If you need to jump off, it is not rude. So it's very important that we adhere to time in relative ways. So time actually of being very precise or rigid is very much a white dominant culture mentality. So for us to say, I said I would end at 1, we're going to end at 1. That's a generally, for those of us who are white or pass for white, that's a very comforting thing. For others that don't subscribe to the white dominant culture, time is much more fluid. So I am trying in my own work to honor both things, that to let people know that it's not rude to jump off, but that you're also welcome to stay on. We're going to stay on a little bit and get a little bit of closure. It'll continue recording. So if you do have other things you need to get to that are time sensitive, you can just leave the meeting. You don't have to say goodbye or thank you, though you are very welcome to do that. If there's something that didn't get addressed, you're welcome to put that in the chat. If there's something personally for me, you can private chat with me, and that will also get recorded. So if there's something you want to share, but not to the whole. But as we get a little bit more fluid closure, let me do a couple little last things. When you think about yourself and those you're serving, age will definitely impact our ability to learn something new. So I always give the example that when I went to Spain back in May, I was reminded again of how terribly sad it is that we have pushed monolingualism in the United States, and that how deeply I regret not being multilingual, even duolingual, right? I just get it good at English, Christy. So I came back and I said, I'm going to learn Spanish. And I dutifully did my Duolingo for 40, 50, 60 days. And now I can say una chaqueta verde. And that doesn't help me. I don't need a green coat, but it's all I learned to say, right? And so it takes a lot, because I'm a person who's been 25 more than once. And so the amount of effort it takes for my brain to learn something is bigger than Jen's. So when Jen's like, oh, I just did this and I just did that, yeah, because you're not over here on this thing, right? So be very
You
thoughtful.
not know how old I am. I'm older than you think I am.
You're a little closer to me.
A lot closer than you think.
Oh, good. But then that doesn't make me feel better, because that means you're just Oh, yeah. So I can't blame it on. She must have so much other good things going for her. All right. So there's that to consider. It's to consider which mode we're in. So we use Dan Siegel's work. We use the hand. So anybody that's got kids at home or partners at home or coworkers at home, you can do this. I did this with my parents. You use your hand as a hand model, and you go, okay, I take my hand, I put the limbic area or limbic regions here, and then I put my fingers over it. Sort of looks like a brain, okay? And so this is your brain stem. This is what I call Middle Earth. And this is your cortex, and this is your prefrontal cortex, okay? So your fingertips are this beautiful stuff. It's called compassion and empathy and problem solving and making a good choice. When your lid is flipped, at best, you're in this Middle Earth area, which is the hypothalamus, the hippocampus and the amygdala and the limbic areas, which is all really driven by strong emotions, maybe a little bit of thinking, and then the brainstem. In the brainstem, that's our basement brain, our reptilian brain. That's the fight or flight, freeze or faint. We call it the red or the blue, fight or flight, freeze or faint. So if we're looking at our beautiful students, our families, our colleagues, ourselves, and our brains are this, right? Our lids are flipped. You cannot learn the content. So no matter how universally designed Jen has made it, with closed captioning in 18 languages that are all racially sensitive and no white culture bias crap in it, If my lid is flipped, I cannot learn it. I need Jen to put my lid back on. Then she can teach me again. So if you say to your kids today, or your pet, or your partner, I've told you 100 times, if you've said something 100 times, they're not the slow learner. I learned that from a friend once. If their lid is flipped, all right? So be careful not only how you're delivering instruction, but when, and that your job is to whoop, put everybody's lids, put your own lid back on, and we'll give you some resources about how to extend the green zone for people. Ashley, make sure I don't forget to do that. Okay, so long-term plan. This is, again, if you have to jump off, jump off. We're a little bit over, but if anybody kind of wanted to talk about how do I grow into this, I want to give you a little bit of going forward. Sarah Nichols, when she spoke with us on Wednesday night, also really invited us to think about what's next. Where am I going from here? Not only my action plan at the end of this Zoom recording, but sort of my path forward. How will I stay connected with the people in this group? How will I kind of be discerning about where I get information? Do I want to follow Jen on Twitter so that I can kind of get stuff? She posted earlier today about how to reach out to your congressperson about the acts that she was talking about. So if you're like, oh, what was that? How do I find it? You can go back in her Twitter thread and you can find ways to be an advocate. So I want you to think about, what is your long-term plan? What is, are you just doing something, as Jen said, to pivot? Are you just doing it temporarily? Do you say, wow, what was temporary is now the short-term, long-term? We're going to be doing this for a couple of months and maybe for the next year. So how do we move out of reaction to responding? So if you buy or do something that is a free web-based technology, here's my caution. If it's free, great, beautiful place to start. Look at that company and look to see if they have things you can buy later. The reason I say this is two reasons. If they have different packages, you can grow into it as needed, or somebody's already paying them, which means they're doing ongoing tech support and fixing bugs and trying to be doing upgrades. If it's totally free and they have no other way other than maybe advertisements to get revenue, they could stop tomorrow. They may not fix a bug. They may not be working. I didn't say this, but you've got Windows-based machines. You've got Mac operating systems. You've got mobile devices. You need web-based technologies that are doing that thinking, unless you're a programmer, for you, because you're going to have people watching, listening, consuming in a whole ways that you can't anticipate. So while free is fabulous, just be cautioned that if it's only free, you may not be able to grow into it, or they may not be doing tech support in a way that you need if you want to use it over time. Can you export it? This is a Blackboard issue, or something that's like a learning management or a course management system. If you upload everything into it, and then that platform goes away, or you change jobs and they use a different platform, how do you get your stuff back out? Because we're used to copying and pasting. How am I going to have to export, re-upload? If I made it's called native. If I recorded it on Instagram, or I recorded it in Facebook, but not everybody's on Facebook anymore, how do I get my content out of Facebook? So you got to be thinking about not only how do I get it in, how do I get it back out? And then definitely, can other people help you? So like today, Ashley and Tony are helping me. You all could join me. Do they have levels of access so that you're the administrator, but somebody can facilitate, somebody can watch, you can share it, but they can't edit? Can they edit but not share? So do you have levels of access? This will become important so that other people can step up. So you want to make a breakout group. You want to do a pair and share, but you're the only one that has controls over the learning environment. Well, then the students can't form their own groups, or they can't be the facilitator or the host or the recorder. So you have to just at least be thinking longer term, how are you going to allow others to be able to interface at different levels of access, and all web-based technologies have different things. But if everything's on your hard drive and relies on you to problem solve, then you can't be as nimble to help others. Okay. Let's see. Going forward, just to say it again, because I think it's helpful to hear, be discerning who you're getting information from, whether that's me or somebody else. Would I love it if I am your home base? Of course, because that's my job, is to sit here and to be of service to you. And if nobody wants me, then I just have myself and my dog, right? So you can follow me on social media. My work is always about the adult learners. Maybe you've never noticed that about me, but that's my big passion, is how to help people who help children. So you can follow me and or Jen on Twitter. I'm on Facebook every day. With help from Ashley, I'm on Twitter, and I'm trying to be on Instagram more. But I want you to also think about who in this network did you see this also a like-minded soul or in a similar position that you could reach out to, and I can do some introductions. And then know that everything will be dripped to you. So if by Saturday you haven't received an email from me, reach back out to me in social media or on email and say, I'm not getting anything, Christy, because for sure by Saturday, which would be March 21st, in case you're listening to this later down the road, but by March 21st, if you in some way tried to connect with me and aren't getting an email, we're not connected. So I want to close the session with two things. I'd like you to visualize with me for a minute, just to add to the collective possibilities of what is to come. And then I want you to feel free to unmute yourself or put things in the chat. I'll stay here and be here, but if there's anything you want to add. So if it feels good to close your eyes, you can close your eyes. If you just want to like dream and think with me for a minute, I want you to think about three things. What if we keep calling this unprecedented times and uncharted territory and uncertain, but what if we reframed that and we said, what if this that's happening to humanity allows us to reclaim not only children's right to learn through play, but humans' right to learn through play? What if learning became joyful? What if it became inspiring, not we should? So I want you to think about whatever you create going forward, whatever you take on, whatever you put out in the world, is it reclaiming our right to learn through play? I'd also invite you to think about reimagining how we've thought of inclusion. Have we always thought of inclusion around just our physical placement of a child with a diverse ability in a classroom? Have we thought about inclusion as broad as not just ability, but race and gender and sexuality and spirituality and language and mindset and age? So can we really reimagine a more inclusive community, a more inclusive humanity? And then the last one, this is my wish, is that, we've been talking about the revolution for many years. I left higher ed in 2013. So for me, I've been talking about the early care and education revolution. The Grace Lee Boggs puts the parentheses around the R because the emphasis is on change, is on evolution. And can we believe in a possibility where early care and education is the most valued part of the work that we do as a human society? Can we see that on the other side of all of this, we don't just come back and do things as we always have, but that we've actually evolved and we can revolutionize early care and education? That's my hope. That's my dream. And yeah, I'll leave it those couple of things with you all. I'll stop sharing again. So if anybody wants to see each other or just see who's left on the video here, anything for the greater good, any hopes, dreams, ideas?
Thanks for having me,
I'm
Christy.
thinking about,
Go ahead, Sarah. I'll come back to Jen.
sorry, it'll just be really quick. I'm thinking about Grace Lee Boggs because I've only recently found out something about her.
Yeah.
This idea of revolutionizing change, I think, is so important. Is there any book in particular you would recommend that we read from Grace Lee Boggs, or any video or anything like that?
Yeah, yeah, we'll put a couple things together. Thank you for asking. She lived to be 100. She's a Chinese American, actually. So this might be a beautiful connection for you, Sarah, for your student.
Oh, yeah.
She
Yeah,
got
that's a
her
great idea.
PhD in
Thank you.
1940, and she was until the day she died, a humongous activist. She married a black activist in Detroit, and they were a power couple. She studied Marxism. She's a thought leader. There's a beautiful podcast that she does on Being. There's a documentary on her. So we'll give you some good stuff. Yeah, Grace Lee Boggs. She's from Michigan. She lived to be 100.
Thank you.
Yes. And so, yes, thank you. And Jen, seriously, thank you. I owe you more than one adult beverage for sure.
Well, hopefully I'll see you at some point this year, right?
Yes.
In real life.
In real life. In real life. But I do appreciate you, not just for today, but I appreciate everything that you're doing and showing up and sharing in this world. So thank you. Yeah. Anybody else? Sarah, if you're still on, still love you and still appreciate you.
Oh, thank you so much. I really enjoyed this presentation, and it's making me think about all the different things I can do. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Good, thanks. Good. Anybody else need anything? Dana, you doing okay there in Nevada? If you're still on, I don't want to call anybody out. Okay. Well, I'll take a breath. Oh, Miss Carrie.
I am okay, Christy. Thanks for
Yeah.
asking. Sorry, it took me a while to unmute myself.
No, that's okay. I was like, I don't want to call anybody out because Sarah Nichols already told me, like, don't be calling on me today because I got other stuff to be doing.
Yeah, I am multitasking. We are now working from home, so I'm just trying to figure everything out from here. But thank you so much for all you do. I appreciate you.
Just know that we're here. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Unless anybody needs anything, I just want to make sure everything got recorded in the chat. If you had any questions or needs or requests, otherwise I'm going to go ahead and wrap this session up, and you'll get the link to this recording and all the others by tomorrow. And then just reach out anytime in terms of whatever you might need. Okay. Yeah. Great, thank you. Yeah, well, the sun is coming out here in Ohio, so that's a beautiful thing. So, yes, thank you.
Much love, Christy.
Thank you, Miss Carrie. I miss your face. All right, guys, to the revolution. See you later.